Welcome to Tigray Television. I'm Erin Imano. Will be presenting the news for you today. Stay tuned. Eritrea's shelling on the town of Adinavrid in northwestern Tigray on October 6th has caused the death of 2 children and heavy injury of 2 others. Our reporter spoke with the brothers who lost limbs from the shelling in Suhul Hospital in Shira, who endure unspeakable pain due to the insufficient treatment in the hospital. For Abil Zagaw's reports, Salomit Khalai.
Halafam Shmendi and Angasom Shmendi were brothers who reside in Adinavrid in northwestern Tigray. Shelling by Eritrean forces on the 6th of October 2022 in the area has left these brothers scarred for life, killing 2 of their friends and causing them to lose their limbs.
There
were 4 of us. 2 of us are alive, but the other 2 died. One died immediately and the other reached to Shira Hospital but couldn't make it out alive. Ma'arag was 9 years old and Nathnael was 6. We were playing when it hit. 2 of us are amputated. The other 2 are dead. They were my friends. They are dead now.
Halafam says getting back to their normal lives seems impossible to them now.
I have lost my left hand and my right leg. We were raised happy. We still want to run, to play and to do what every child does. I think we'll go back to school, but no more running.
Angasom also says their mother does not know their whereabouts, as it was neighbors that brought them to the hospital.
My mom doesn't know we are here. We were hit while playing. Then people brought us here. She doesn't know where I am. I don't know where she is either.
Medical Director of Suhul Hospital in Shira, Dr. Fsahatzion Gabramedin says the hospital suffers from lack of medical supplies to treat the victims and called upon the international community to ensure the delivery of medical supplies into Tigray.
There is no medication, and everybody knows this. We have still hopes on the international community. We call upon the international community to pressure the Ethiopian government and bring us a solution. We are barely treating patients here.
Since the start of the new round of invasion in August of this year, Ethiopian and Eritrean forces have conducted multiple aerial attacks and artillery shelling, leading to the death of numerous civilians and the destruction of civilian property.
Many have lost their family members in indiscriminate shellings across towns in northwestern Tigray launched by the Eritrean forces on civilians. Among many of those killed and injured in shelling, children make up a handful of the number. Our reporters have visited a hospital in Shira and to speak with the victims of these attacks. Sarah Kalali reports.
Following the shelling of several towns in northwestern Tigray by Eritrean forces, this hospital room in Shira is filled with the cries of children screaming in pain because basic medications such as painkillers have been depleted from the hospital.
They used to live in Sharara before, but then they fled to Zibangadana, and that's where they were hit.
Displaced from their homes, not only are these 2 children dealing with the torment of losing their mothers at a young age, but also had to sustain heavy injuries themselves.
We were displaced from Adukurai and journeyed to Maisaglai. We spent 2 nights there, and on the 29th of September, they were killed.
Displaced from their homes, not only are these 2 children dealing with the torment of losing their mothers at a young age, but also had to sustain heavy injuries themselves.
He was hurt after being hit in the shelling. His mother were carrying him on her back, but she died. I found him there, and it was his grandfather who had brought him here. His mother had 4 other children, whom whereabouts remain unknown. He keeps calling for his mom. He keeps asking me to take him to his mom. I found my 8-year-old daughter and wife dead, and him lying there full of tears. When I picked him up, his clothes were covered in blood. My wife was holding him in her arms and my daughter was behind her. They were sitting under a tree, and when the shelling began, it cut the tree and tore her body into pieces.
Renewed conflict has meant indiscriminate shelling, death of children, and parting of families for many people in Tigray, as the brutality of the invading Eritrean forces continue to attack civilians.
Tigray External Affairs Office called on the UN Secretary General to provide the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia with all the necessary resources to conduct investigations on atrocities in the war on Tigray. In a statement issued regarding extension of the mandate of the Commission, the office said extending the mandate without providing resources would be futile. Sablor Glama has the details.
The Tigray External Affairs Office issued a statement on Tuesday regarding the extension of the mandate of the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia for another year. The statement welcomed adoption of the resolution to extend mandate the Commission during the 51st session of the UN Human Rights Council and recognition of the ongoing grave human rights violations following the resumption of the war on Tigray. The office expressed its expectations that the Commission's preliminary findings would be formalized and perpetrators of such genocidal atrocities are held accountable. The statement urged the UN Human Rights Council and the international community to pressure the Ethiopian government to grant access to the investigative team, highlighting that the government was undermining independence and impartiality of the Commission by denying members entry into Tigray. The office also called upon the UN Secretary General to provide the investigative team with all the required resources, including expertise on children and conflict-related sexual and gender-based violence, stating that extending the mandate without adequate resource would be futile. The statement finally reiterated commitment of the government of Tigray to cooperate with the Commission for an independent investigation.
Ambassador Fisahas Gadom, representative of the government of Tigray, had a brief stay with our station, where he stated nearly all the African nations represented on this council's vote against the resolution to extend the Commission's mandate signifies the country's disregard to internationally recognized human rights. Sablor Glama has more.
In a brief stay with our station, Ambassador Fisahas Gadom, representative of the government of Tigray, said nearly all African nations voting against the resolution to extend mandate of the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia implies their indifference to basic human rights violations in Tigray.
Not only voting no, the African Union have looked the other way. Genocide is being committed against fellow Africans. The African Union and its commissioner have taken a lead in blessing this genocide. The old idea that the one who think it goes like the one who lives in a glass house shouldn't be first one to throw a stone or what have you. Every African country, especially these 13 countries that are a member of the Commission, feel one of these days they could also be accountable for human rights issues. You don't think these countries do care about human rights issues in Tigray. They don't even care about their own citizens' human rights. Therefore, we are not proud of what Africans are doing. When I speak to Western diplomats, and we complain about their lack of reaction to what's happening, then they say, look what the Africans have. They could not even support you when we are presenting a draft resolution on our part. Therefore, it is a shame, but that is how African politics is.
Ambassador Fisahas stated his belief that despite efforts by the Ethiopian government, the Commission would call what is unfolding in Tigray by its name.
And therefore, we have now the extension of the mandate of the Commission for 1 year. And I have no doubt that at the conclusion of their term, they will unequivocally conclude that genocide has been committed in Tigray. We know the Ethiopian government will do everything for this not to happen, but it is beyond its control. Therefore, the extension to us is a huge step in as far as investigating genocide is concerned.
He also added that even though some positive changes are visible regarding the international community's response to the humanitarian catastrophe in Tigray, much more still needs to be done to avert the calamity in the region.
In the last few weeks and days, there have been some concrete, what I consider positive signals and steps by the members of the international community. So the international community is not doing as much as should do in terms of humanitarian access. It cannot do enough. It hasn't done enough pressure for cessation of hostilities to be agreed upon. Why? Because they believe that the survival of Abiy is a priority to them than the perishing of millions of people in Tigray.
The ambassador finally stated that the international community has to ensure justice and accountability.
And it's always post-genocide that the international community awakens and says never again. And therefore, those who committed genocide never survived. If they do, it was a matter of time. In the history of genocide, there has never been where a genocidal government has negotiated its way out of this crime with its victims. Abiy and Isaias know this. They have committed genocide. At the end of the day, they will be held accountable.
Tigray television has spoken with several Eritrean prisoners of war who say that they'd been conscripted and put in prison to later be forced to enter battlefields. Here's what they had to say. Several prisoners of war that Tigray television has spoken to say that the Eritrean government is implementing tactics of terror on its own people to manipulate them into getting into war. These tactics include imprisonment, torture, and threats, they say. Salah Abdo Muhammad is an Eritrean prisoner of war who says he'd been imprisoned before he was suddenly forced to fight in this war.
أنا ما كنت مع في الدش في الدش معناتها كنت هربت منهم مسكوني دخلوني في السجن.
I escaped from the military, but then they caught me and put me in the prison for 4 months. Afterwards, they brought me here. I didn't know what we were getting into. When I asked others, they said that we will only be taking training, but they ended up forcing us into the war.
The prisoners pointed out severe penalties and sufferings await anyone who attempts to oppose or question the orders from the government.
باختيارك ما في اختيار هناك. تمشي مجبور أنت لو ما مشيت يجي يقفل بيتك. لو عندك مرة وعيال يرموهم برا.
We don't have an end goal or a choice. We are simply forced. If we don't do what they ask of us, they lock our homes, throw our kids and wives and the rest of our family members out. If you happen to have parents, they imprison them. The rules are pretty clear. If you do not obey their orders, there is no guarantee to what happens to you.
mass media نكاتتنا بتعامل اللي قرم عبديك ستايكا يبلي تسب لك كمزي تريو عبد تقاومتني. The
people in Eritrea are against the authoritarian regime ideologically. However, no one had the intention of opposing the system by any means, knowing that it all comes down to severe consequences. The people outside Eritrea are free to say whatever they have in their minds, and so they do. We watch television broadcasts, programs by the opposing parties, as to why the life of Eritrean youths are being wasted on this war. We feel what they say and approve it at heart, but we can't do anything about it. You can't say anything to criticize the government, and if you do, you're bound to go to prison and suffer the consequences.
Another prisoner of war, Idris Muhammad, says he had little knowledge of what he was getting into. He says that they weren't made aware of the objectives of the war or even where they were being taken.
لا عندنا هدف لا شيء ناويين نسويه معناتها ما عارفين ذاته لما جينا من قحطيلاي ركبنا في العربات.
We didn't have any objective or plan when entering this war. When we left Gahtalai, we didn't know whether we were going for training or war. There is one thing that we were told. If you get caught, we would be executed, and that we should kill them before they do.
Idris added that there would have been no way for them to participate in this war had they found out the sham of it.
نحن لو كنا نعرف الهدف قبل ما نقوم في محلنا كنا تكلمنا أو هربنا.
Had we learned the purpose of this war earlier, we would have opposed or escaped somehow. The Tigrayan people are within their jurisdiction. They are fighting for their survival. But our presence in this war was uncalled for. One with no objective cannot achieve.
Lastly, the prisoners called on the people of Eritrea and Ethiopia to prioritize the prevalence of peace and stability and work towards common good.
والله أنا أوجه للشباب وخاصة لكل المجتمع مش الشباب لكل المجتمع الموجود الشيء أنا ما منه هدف ما منه كير وكاسة الجار جار.
We wish for this war to end. Nothing good comes out of war, because war only brings destruction. I would advise everyone in Eritrea to refrain from getting involved in this pointless, wordless war, especially with a neighboring country.
In a joint statement issued on Wednesday, the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands called for an immediate withdrawal of Eritrean forces from Tigrayan territories. The countries called on Eritrea and other foreign actors to stop fueling the war on Tigray. The countries also stated their concern on the ongoing war and the humanitarian situation in northern Ethiopia and called on Tigrayan and Ethiopian governments to halt military operations and agree on cessation of hostilities. They also called for unhindered and unsustained humanitarian access to millions in need. The countries condemned violence against the civilian population while also expressing their concerns about the reports from the International Commission of Human Rights Experts on Ethiopia that found reasonable grounds to believe that war crimes, including the use of starvation as a method of warfare in the war on Tigray, have been committed. More than 12,000 students across Ethiopia have walked out of examination rooms. The students have refused to take the 2020 university entrance examination. This comes in light after Abiy Ahmed went on state media and announced national service before joining university was required. Lomi Tigrai has more.
More than 12,000 students across the country have refused to take the 2022 university entrance examination. The examination was first of its kind in that it took place in universities throughout Ethiopia.
መጀመሪያው ፈተና ካለፈ በኋላ ተመልሰው እንዲገቡ በአገር ሽማግሌዎች በሃይማኖት አባቶች የቀረበውን ጥሪ ተቀብለን ወደ 7000 በላይ የሚሆኑ እንደዚህ ተገደው የወጡትን እና መግባትና መፈተን የሚፈልጉትን አስገብተናል። ከዛ ውጪ የወጡት በፍላጎታቸው ገብተው መፈተን ያልፈለጉት ተማሪዎች ናቸው። አይነት ውሳኔ ሲወስኑ ውጤት እንዳለው አውቀው ነው ብለን ተስፋ እናደርጋለን።
ከፈተና ተገቢ ባልሆነ መንገድ ራሳቸውን ያገለሉ ተማሪዎችን በተመለከተ መቅደላ አምባ ዩኒቨርሲቲ መካነ ሰላም ካምፓስ 1700 ተማሪዎች፣ ከደብረ ማርቆስ ዩኒቨርሲቲ 1226፣ ከባህር ዳር ዩኒቨርሲቲ 2711፣ ከደብረ ታቦር ዩኒቨርሲቲ 7150 በጠቅላላው 12787 ተማሪዎች ፈተና ሙሉ በሙሉ ወይም ውስን ፈተናዎችን በመውሰድ ጥለው ወጥተዋል።
This comes just days after the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed gave a speech to a group of youth stating that national service was necessary before joining university.
አንድ ወጣት ሃይ ስኩል ከጨረሰ በኋላ ወደ ዩኒቨርሲቲ ከመግባቱ በፊት ለጥቂት ወራት የብሔራዊ አገልግሎት አይነት ሲያሜው ለጊዜው ያልታወቀ ሰርቪስ ያስፈልገዋል። ያ ሰርቪስ ከክልሉ ውጭ ከአካባቢ ውጭ ያለውን ነገር ለማየት ይተቀምበታል። እንደ ከዚህ ቀደሙ አስገዳጅ አናደርግም። በግድ ካልዘመት ካንልም፣ በግድ ሄደ አገርን ካላወቅ ካንልም። ነገር ግን አገሩን የማያት ሰው ስራ አንቀጥርም።
Many parents across Ethiopia accompany their children to school for fear of forced conscription and their children being snatched by government forces. Prisoners of war that participated in the war on Tigray have confirmed forced recruitment in Ethiopia.
Political analysts say the African Union-led negotiation between the Ethiopian government and the government of Tigray lacks readiness and impartiality. The government of Tigray had expressed its stand that African problems should be solved by Africans, but also questions African Union's impartiality amid hopes of peaceful negotiations led by the organization. Abraha Garutensai reports.
The African Union has been heavily criticized on its stand with regard to the deadly war that has taken place for almost 2 years in Tigray. Right on the onset of the war, the African Union chairperson Musa Faki Mahamat described the war in Tigray as a law enforcement operation and failed to condemn the genocidal campaign on the people of Tigray. And neither did he nearly suggested that the Eritrean forces to vacate the Tigray territory.
In Ethiopia, the federal government took bold steps to preserve the unity stability, and respect for the constitutional order of the country, which is legitimate for all states.
Mouz Gidey, Associate Principal Researcher at Tigray Policy Studies, says the AU has clearly demonstrated its negligence on the genocidal war in Tigray, calling it a law enforcement operation through its chairperson Musa Faki Mohammed right at the very beginning of the conflict.
AU's readiness to lead this negotiation has been tarnished, not now, but earlier during the first stages of the ceasefire, because the president of the Secretariat of AU has been supporting the war efforts in Tigray as a law enforcement program, and then later on he has been backing up Abiy's government and trying also to cover up the various crimes committed by Isaias Afwerki and Abiy Ahmed.
AU's High Representative to the Horn of Africa, Olusegun Obasanjo, avoided urging Eritrea to withdraw its force from Tigray. Instead, he invited it to the negotiation table. Obasanjo was criticized for being partial in favor of the federal government, leading to the complaint by the Tigrayan government of Obasanjo's inadequacy in leading the negotiation. Alex Doal, Executive Director of the World Peace Foundation, also says that Obasanjo achieved nothing in 13 months except for facilitating Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki's plans to contain Tigray under military confinement.
We've seen General Olusegun Obasanjo in post as the High Representative of the African Union Commissioner for 13 months, during which time he has not managed to achieve a single face-to-face meeting between the parties. He has been extremely lackadaisical, clearly partisan, and the suspicion lingers that his agenda is really to smooth the way for the Ethiopian government, hand in hand with the state of Eritrea, to impose a settlement on Tigray at the point of a gun.
Recently, the AU invited the federal government of Ethiopia and the government of Tigray to South Africa for AU-led peace talks to be chaired by Olusegun Obasanjo, as supported by former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and former South African Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, to which the Ethiopian government replied swiftly, saying that the invitation was in line with the country's principled position. The government of Tigray also expressed its willingness, meanwhile asking the issues of security, logistics and others. Uhuru Kenyatta also said he wouldn't be available on the specified date, for he had another schedule, and expressed his demand to be informed on the details of the peace talks. The African Union later announced that the peace talk had been delayed for logistics reasons. Dr. Mouz Gidey says the announcement for the delayed peace talks shows that the AU is not ready to lead the peace talks with the utmost responsibility.
A continental organization trusted for negotiating parties undergoing a genocidal war should have thought deeper than this. Issue of logistics, hostage accommodation, relationship, transport, security shouldn't have been a matter, because what's at stake is the life of millions of people and the integrity of the whole, a big state like Ethiopia, and the peace and stability of a great region. So that a continental organization is saying that it lacks logistical arrangements or other preparations is farcical. It's a cruel joke. Otherwise, AU could have done better. That also shows you, according to some analysis, they say that the AU's invitation for the negotiation is a delay tactic employed by Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki. That could also work.
Alex Doal also says he doesn't expect the AU-led negotiation in South Africa to be fruitful, as there are no evidence of serious preparedness by the AU for the peace talks.
At the moment, the diplomatic channels are pretty much at a dead end. The African Union is talking about inviting the parties to peace talks in South Africa in about a week's time. But there's no evident serious preparation for those peace talks, and it will be very surprising to me if they're handled in an impartial, credible, robust, and serious manner.
The political analysts also say that the AU-led negotiation is unlikely to end almost 2 years-long conflict in Tigray, as the mediator hasn't got trust from both sides from the very beginning, a condition that violates the basic principles of negotiations in general.
The judge or the negotiator need to be trusted by all parties. They have to invest their confidence in him or in her, so that the peace process can go on, and so that a negotiated settlement of problems a negotiated identification of problems and resolution of major challenges. And at the end of the day, to arrive at a win-win solution, you need to invest your trust on the negotiator. But from day one, AU as an institution, and the Secretariat as the head of the institution, and then the chief negotiator of the African Union, they have lost their trust by especially Tigrayan government and the Tigrayan people. And even in the eye of the international community, their neutrality has been tarnished.
If you were to take an ABC of mediation, the A is that the mediator needs to be accepted by both parties. And General Obasanjo has not been accepted by the government of Tigray. And in any normal scenario of conflict resolution, he would be removed. And if one party objects, it doesn't have to explain. If any mediation, any commercial mediation, any family mediation, any mediation between political parties or states, the basic principle is that the mediator has to be accepted by both. And if that's not the case, it's very unlikely that the mediation is going to proceed.
Regional and international political analysts express their pessimism towards the AU-led mediation to end the more than 2-year-long conflict in Tigray. The issues of readiness, commitment, and impartiality have shadowed the AU-led mediation, and many believe that it's unlikely to be fruitful.
Our reporter Winta Kidana spoke with Lemlem Alamayo, an IDP from Western Tigray, where she says she saw horrific accounts of atrocities committed by allied Ethiopian, Eritrean, as well as Amhara forces during their ethnic cleansing campaign that rid majority of Tigrayans out of the area. Let's take a look.
Lemlem Alamayo is one of the thousands of IDPs from Western Tigray who are sheltered in Sawakari IDP camp in the capital Mekelle. She was displaced from Turkan Qaftahmora, Western Tigray, where she led her life as a farmer. She says on December 6 of 2020, a war was launched on her village from the triplet forces of Ethiopian National Defense Forces, Eritrean Forces, and Fano, a paramilitary group.
It was on December 6th that our neighborhood was attacked. We were all living our daily lives, that day like every other day, and when suddenly the attack was launched, everyone started to disperse in different directions to save their lives. Some of them exiled to Sudan, some of them stayed in their homes, and some of us started out a journey west to Bakhar.
Lemlem says she witnessed horrific atrocities in Bakhar before she had to go hide in one of the local churches just to save her life.
There was a heavy firing in Bakhar that I had to hide under a bridge for 9 days. Eritrean forces were firing from west while Abiy Ahmed's soldiers were firing from behind. Bakhar was on fire all day long from both sides for almost 10 days. They would say, Yanyano, the land is ours, and you have to get out. They would ask for your ethnicity, and if you happen to be Tigrayan, they would start to treat you like you aren't a human being. Many children were killed in front of their parents. The atrocities committed on Western Tigray by Fano are really endless and full of cruelty. Later on, we had to get out of the bridge, and we went on hiding into Gabriel Church.
Lemlem says she witnessed from the high ground of the church as the burning of 18 houses inhabited by families were being burnt, looking down into the village from where she was hidden.
I remembered a day where 18 houses full of people were being burnt down in Bakhar by Fano. We all witnessed it because the church was built to the top of a mountain and the houses were down the valley of Bakhar. A pregnant woman was dragged out of the 18th house. Families were escaping the fire from their own houses through any outlet they could find. Not only did Fano loot so many household belongings, they also took livestock with cars.
Lemlem finally made her journey to Mekelle through Gondar Alamata. She says after her arrival at the capital, she had shelter in different IDP camps because her relatives at the capital were in an even worse condition. Lemlem says she hasn't been able to get enough humanitarian aid as an IDP and her life condition kept on declining due to lack of basics.
During my first 6-month stay in Mekelle, I was only able to get food aid of 15 kilograms, just only once. Then I got sheltered in this IDP camp on the 15th of September. Ever since then, I am receiving insufficient amount of aid. We have a problem of water. Animals like hyena and security issues threaten our lives every day.
As her message to the international community, Lemlem says she has nothing to say to the world that has chosen to keep quiet, regardless of the situation in Tigray.
I don't think the international community really feels the pain we had to go through and we are living in now. They have chosen silence, so I have nothing to say to the international community.
Well, that concludes our news for the hour. Thank you for tuning in.